Hey, today we are talking flea beetles. Now, if you've got this shiny little black beetle that's punching little tiny holes in your cabbage, broccoli, kale, cauliflower, you may have a flea beetle. If you've got this brilliant metallic little flea that looks like a flea, and it is everywhere come summer, all your vegetable plants, we may still be talking about a flea beetle. So come on along with me, and I can explain to you how I am growing these gorgeous kale, cauliflower, and broccoli without a row cover. No insecticides, not even neem. So how am I going to do that? I'm using regenerative practices. One of the major things we need to know when we're starting to deal with a pest is as much about that pest as we possibly can. 1, what's its life cycle? 2, what does it eat? 3, what is its preference? And 4, how do we mitigate? We're not trying to eliminate, because guess what? We are sitting right in the middle of northern Montana. It is flea beetle country, and they're native. So, if we plop our garden out in the middle of the prairie, which we have technically, then we've just opened the doors for a flea beetle restaurant. If we have did the same thing and the plants aren't that healthy, the flea beetle's thinking open buffet, and they're going to come and they're going to eat. We don't want any of that, right? And when I first started talking about flea beetles, I thought, well, flea beetles, they're only interested in cabbage and kale, broccoli, cauliflower. That's all they eat. And it turns out, after doing some research, there is a bunch of flea beetles that like living in Montana and probably all over North America and maybe much of wherever you live in the world. But the solid black one that we seem to have millions come August, that's a Crucifer flea beetle, and eats Crucifer plants and Canola. So Canola is the the brilliant yellow fields of canola. They're growing canola oil. Could be mustard. They're in the same family, and guess what? The flea beetles love them. So they are in those areas. That's the solid black one, so that black one can also be in my garden. There's also the Canola flea beetle, who is striped, who I have seen on occasion, but not very often. And then there's the shiny, metallic looking one. It's called the Western Black, and it eats various kinds of crucifers, which also includes not only my kale, cauliflower, broccoli, and mustards, it eats nasturtiums and sweet alyssum. Anything in that family, those flea beetles could eat. Now, the other day, or 2 years ago, I had some people start talking about flea beetles eating their tomatoes. And I'm like, what? I've never heard of such a thing. Are you sure it's a flea beetle? And they were pretty confident it was flea beetles. So I checked into it, and sure enough, there is a flea beetle that will eat tomatoes. It is called the potato worm. So what do you guess? Yep, the next year I had people calling asking, how do I control the flea beetles in my potatoes? So they also eat other nightshades, which seems like I would have put 2 and 2 together, because every year that I had grown eggplant, they got annihilated. In fact, I could use an eggplant as a trap crop to pull the flea beetles away from my broccoli and kale and cauliflower that I didn't want ate. There's other things that you can plant, use as traps. I do like the ones that are in pots because I can move them around, but you can plant them in the ground too. Mustards, any color mustard, yellow, black, brown, all work great. Radishes work great. I plant them in succession, so there's always a few plants that are susceptible to flea beetles. Now, what plant is susceptible to flea beetle? Now, most gardeners would have the case to say they all are. Well, I'm here to say, unfortunately, that's not true. Oh, by the way, I forgot you people in the south. There's a pale striped flea beetle that can eat squash, beans, corn, sunflowers, lettuce, and potatoes. I feel so sorry for you folks. We do not have that. It has 2 yellow stripes. If you do have that, I'm sorry. But back to what the flea beetle trap crops. So the trap crop is going to pull the flea beetles to those plants, and most people think, well, the flea beetle will eat any plant. That's not true. Flea beetles only eat plants that have a poor immune system or are not healthy. Now I'm using John Kemp's plant health pyramid as a reference, that if the plants are healthy enough, they won't have that pest. Little bit to absorb. I know we've got to pause on that one, because we think as gardeners all of our plants are healthy and they look amazing. So you can't look at a plant and just look at it, just like you can't human and detect, oh, that person's going to get a cold or that person's going to get the flu. You can't see the immune system. You can't see the immune system in these plants either. So it's super important that we are getting healthier plants. The healthier, the better. Now, how do we tell if they're healthy or not? I've made some videos about that, but it's super important that we know what that looks like. And I'll go over that with you here in a second. Let's look at the life cycle of this pest, because that is super important that we understand life cycle. I've got 5 pages wrote here on flea beetles. A lot of information. Let's make sure we talk about this life cycle of this flea beetle so we really understand it. So they overwinter as adults in plant debris and on field edges and stuff. Then when they come out in the spring, they lay eggs. They lay them in groups of 3 or 4 at the base of the plant. Those hatch in 10-12 days, and then they go into the soil, and those larvae eat the roots of your plant. So yeah, this is pretty brutal. So they're going to lay around your cabbage, broccoli, or kale, all your brassicas, radishes, whatever. They're going to lay their eggs there. Babies are going to, larvae is going to be eating the hair roots of those particular plants. So they're already weakening the plant before they come out and do our visual damage that we say. It should be 11, 13 days thereabouts. Then they become a full-fledged adults, and they're out visually where we see them working on the outsides above ground on the plants 25, 34 days. So the total life cycle is 4 to 6 weeks. So in Montana, they'll emerge as full-blown adults and eating vegetation usually before the 4th of July. I've seen my first one a couple days ago. So anytime now, end of June, 1st of July, they're going to come out as an adult and start eating on your plants. Now this is important because then when those adults start laying eggs, that's when we're starting to go up exponentially. So we got each adult laying 3 to 4 eggs. So if you have thousands, you could have 4,000 at the end of the summer, because it's going to make a whole nother complete life cycle. So my point is, if you're going to trap them and try to lower their population with these little plant cell packs of cardboard that you're going to pick up, put on a garbage bag, place them where you want them, get flea beetles on them, and then pull the garbage bag up around them to kill them, then you're going to want to do that, I would say, in July. Mid-July, early July. Don't wait for them to go down in the soil and then complete their life cycle again, because when they come out, there's going to be 3 or 4 times as many of them as what went in. Make sense? Okay, as far as the life cycle of the plant, that's super important too, that we plant our plants as early as we can. I've been using Dan Kittredge's idea of not letting the roots get touching the cell of the container. So that means I started them in April and I put them out the end of April. And this is the broccoli, kale, cauliflower, those plants that are cold hardy and handle frost. They went out that early. Because our goal is to get the root system really big and to get 5-6 leaves on the plant before these flea beetles emerge as adults late June. So that's super important. Okay, we will talk about some of the beneficials that eat them. We talked about the big eye bug and damsel bug. Lacewing larvae actually are predators of them too, so that's a win-win. The more lace wings we can get into the system, the better. And then there's fungal pathogens that can wipe them down. I can wipe them out. So those are important to get your soil microbes going in the right direction. All good things. So flea beetles right now, it's the end of June. That is when they're going to emerge out of the soil as full-grown adults. And they're going to start chowing down on your plants. They're going to do that for about 25 to 34, 35 days, somewhere in there. And I've noticed that it's a little bit weather relevant, right? Flea beetles love hot, sunny, dry weather, which causes what? Stressed plants. Flea beetles love stressed plants. So if your plants weren't stressed, the flea beetle isn't going to bother your plants. That's a little bit hard for people to grasp because they're like, oh, they're eating one, they're going to eat them all. That's not true. All right, so for 35 days, the flea beetle's out there munching on your plants if they're unhealthy. Or if they just got a poor immune system. So they complete their life cycle in the ground. So if they complete it in the ground, I think we can control it in the ground. And we'll talk about some ways to do that in a second. Now if you're kind of counting, you guessed it. A flea beetle will have more than one life cycle in a growing season. In Montana, on our average year, what the heck is average? There's no such thing as average anymore. But on the average year, when we used to have a frost at the end of August, the 1st of September, we had 2 life cycles of the flea beetles. You'd notice flea beetles by the 4th of July. Even if you're sleeping at the wheel, you'd start noticing them by then. And you're like, wow, something is eating my cabbage. Then they go back in the soil and come back out for August. It's hot, dry, and when they come back out, their numbers have elevated exponentially, I think they call it. So if we would like to try to figure out how to reduce the population of flea beetles, we would make a trap. I'd like doing it in a small box, like a tray. Plant radishes, broccoli's a little slow. Radishes or mustard, probably something like that in those trays. Now those trays are now movable. I can move them around the garden. I would move them to a location that flea beetles are really liking, hot and sunny. Put a garbage bag underneath of it. Wait for the flea beetles to get on it and maybe stress those plants. Don't water them the day before you set up the trap. And those flea beetles will be on your trap and leave your plants to go to that trap because they love it. They can smell a sick plant miles away. So they come to it. Now I'm going to mist those plants probably early in the morning. And now the flea beetle is either on the soil or on the surface, but not flying. They cannot fly when their wings are damp. We think it's a hop, but they're actually flying. Looks like a flea jumping, but they're going to be in the soil or on the plant, can't move. And gently pull that garbage bag up around them. Now you have them trapped. They're good. I tend to take that trap off to the dump and get rid of it and not even deal with them again. Pretty disposable, simple, easy way to do it. Now that is just reducing populations. That's not getting completely rid of them, because there'll be some flea beetles that have been able to figure out how to deal with that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about healthy plants. Let's look at these kale and cauliflower. So for one thing, we want to have thick leaves. We want them to be thick and substantial. We don't want them to be wimpy and soft. We want them to be large. Obviously these are large, right? Larger the better. So they go from the bottom of the plant, which is this leaf over here, to here, the top of the plant. They should be the same size. We want them to all be big. Big from the bottom to the top. On these crucifers, it's going to be super easy to tell when the plant has gotten really, really healthy, because it is going to get a waxy coat on its leaves. So, for example, take the plant and should be able to rub the wax off. That wax is actually fat. So that means the plant has got everything it needs to get super healthy, build up a good immune system, and it has excess. And it's just like us. It puts fat on. So that fat means that that plant is at its ultimate of health, and that's what we want. Now some people think, well, that only happens on the cabbage, broccoli, kale. That's not true, because it can happen on any plant that's super healthy. Now if you notice, when I swung around here to these tomatoes and this borage, how they have this glistening shine to them, that's that same fat that I'm talking about on all plants. So all of them can get it. So those are key indicators. Another indicator we're looking for, and this isn't a great example of it, but on a tomato we want to have the internode between here and here short. We want to have the leaves the same size at the bottom of the plant, top of the plant. We want big flowers. The borage, got big flowers. Right, so the bigger flowers, the better. Those are all some indicators. Hairier, the better. Really easy to see on the borage. Hairy plants. The hairier, the better on all plants. Now, it's really hard to see any on these guys, but like for instance the summer squash, you'll feel it on there when you first pick that summer squash. You will not see that at the store, but you will see that if you're growing your own. Those are all good indicators to see if your plant is healthy or not. Now these cauliflower and broccoli and kale plants I'm showing you are all planted at the same time as the ones I'm going to show you in the garden. So I don't think it's fair to talk to gardeners when I'm in a greenhouse. Those are kind of two different environments. So I'll show you the difference between those plants. The management has been exactly the same. So from day one, the seeds got a seed inoculant. Never plant naked. So those seeds should always have a biologic inoculant put on them. Now for the gardeners, it's super easy if you just join the Bionutrient Food Association, and they have a garden kit that they'll send you that includes liquid feed. It's got the biologic that you put on the seed coat and some minerals to go in the soil. So these plants got the biologic on them, on the seeds when we planted them. Planted on the same day, same greenhouse, same practices, everything. And then I'll show you these versus the ones that are in garden. So then the only difference is the environment. And so in the greenhouse here, we do not generally get flea beetles. We don't in the early life cycle. We may get them. If we do get them, we'll get them in August. Why would we get them in August? Because those plants are stressed in August. When it starts getting really hot, really dry. It's been a long season, especially in the brassicas family where we've been harvesting the leaves off of it and eating them like your kale. And they're cool season crops. So they're like, please don't make me go through the summer. I'm stressed. And when those plants are stressed, your flea beetles will be on them. And they'll be a great indicator. So the pest is an indicator of health of our plant. How do we get these plants healthier then? If yours aren't this big or have these glossy leaves, you can put something like this liquid feed on. This includes seawater, fish hydrolysate, calcium, magnesium, sulfate, molasses, rock phosphate, magnesium chloride, boric acid, millennium, kelp, copper, zinc, cobalt, and sodium, molybdenate, folates, humics, and worm castings. Yeah, I did really important plants. Chemistry teachers. But that's what's in it. And those ingredients are helping the plant multiple ways, but one way they're helping it is to do photosynthesis better than average. And as it does it better than average, it builds an immune system like no other. And then the pests can't bother it. Now, especially that is true with like leaf-sucking insects like an aphid, spider mite, stuff like that, our miner, leaf miner, all of those can be taken care of with just the photosynthesis, the plant doing photosynthesis as well. Now when we move up the order in our plant pyramid, John Kemp's plant pyramid, we start getting into our more difficult pests. Yes, and flea beetles is in that category, along with our grasshoppers. Yeah, they are all very difficult to deal with because they can digest healthier plants than our aphid, but they cannot digest a really super healthy plant. So in order to get these plants really super healthy, we are needing microbes. Microbes in the soil, microbes on the plant, microbes all over the place to help those plants and that plant doing photosynthesis feed those microbes to help that plant be able to be super healthy. And then you'll see you won't have flea beetles on those plants. And maybe in your first year you won't notice any of this. You'll be like, I'm just inundated with aphids or flea beetles. But it will get better as time goes because it takes a while to build up these microbes in the soil and get the plant working with them and get your plant healthy enough to do what we're talking about. I'm going to show you some practices though that any gardener can do that will help you. So on these kale and broccoli families, we want to remove the lower leaves because those leaves have are not in their growth state, they're in the decline state. So these are leaves that are growing and doing photosynthesis well. This one down here is not so much, right? So I'm going to remove the whole branch of the leaf because I could just break it off, right? Could have broke it off right there and left that little stem on there. But when you do that, I'll show you one. When you do that, the plant is having to still put nutrients up to that leaf stem, trying to revive it. And when it does start working like that, doing difficult things like that, it's putting off a scent. And as soon as I broke that leaf, there's a scent going off, going out in the environment, and maybe calling them flea beetles. So you want to try to avoid that. This leaf I'm going to eat, perfectly healthy. See how it's solid and not wimpy? So it's super healthy. That's what we want. Another thing, I'm not going to just drop this and lay it on the ground because that's going to leave more scent and call in more pests. So we don't want to do that. We want to take them out of the environment. Just like this leaf that I highly damaged, that's going to have to get removed. Right? And I have to remove it back in here want to remove it as close to the stalk as possible so that it's not doing what I just talked about. That's a big leaf, huh? Big and healthy. That's what we're talking about. That's what we want. All right, so you're going to remove, oh, here's one. This kale was harvested by someone, and they just broke the leaf off. They left all of this on. That's extra energy going to this that we don't, that's useless for us. We want to extra energy going to its growth points, so you want to remove those. You can remove them out the bottom of the plant. Don't leave those on there. And I'll take them away too, because we don't want those just hanging around making a bunch of smells. All right, so you're going to do that to all of them, including your cabbages, broccoli, cauliflower, that whole family. That's going to help you. Some other things that are going to help. I'll show you the interplanting at my house. But back in there, you can see there's some nasturtium back in there. That's a trailing nasturtium. We eventually are going to try to get it to trail down along the ground and not trailing up above. Now nasturtiums will get ate by flea beetles. So if you have nasturtiums, I suggest this trailing one because it gets huge. It's a lot of biomass. So if the aphids do come in the greenhouse, they're going to go to that nasturtium first, because we're going to continue to be picking the blossoms off the nasturtiums. We're going to be taking them to the restaurant, and they're going to be getting ate. And so every time I do that, it's encouraging the plant to grow more blossoms, but it's also exerting energy. So by August, and it's continued to exert a lot of energy, it's going to get stressed, and that's when we would have flea beetles. Interplanting dill is a good thing in there. We'll talk more about that. Diversity is super key, and I'll go over that at my house and show you some interplantings that I think will help. I'm not sure that it's the go-to, the only thing. I think this is a combination of things that you're going to do, not to be having to use row cover. So I'm not a fan of row cover for several reasons. One of which, here in Montana, our flea beetles are already in our soil. If you're growing any of the brassicas family whatsoever, the flea beetles are there. And if I put the row cover on those young plants before the flea beetles emerge, they'll need to be going down in May, going on in May. The flea beetles are going to emerge from the soil. They're going to be underneath the row cover. In my situation, that's what I found, is that they're underneath the row cover and on outside both. Keeping row cover down in Montana is like pulling teeth. We have extreme winds, and it's really, really hard to pin it down. And then to pin it down good enough to not have flea beetles entering into it is a major problem. But the whole point is, if your plants are attracting flea beetles, they are not healthy. That's the point I want to make, and that's where we need to be emphasizing. Because if we just put row cover on and we manage to keep the flea beetles out, but yet the flea beetles would still eat our plants still aren't healthy. In order to get healthier humans, we want to have as healthy a plant as possible, so I prefer not to be eating behind the flea beetle or the other pest. I want the plants healthier so they don't have pests. We're doing that with this plant feed. It's not something we'll have to do forever. It is something we need to do to get started and get these plants and microbes being able to cycle these nutrients for the plant to be able to use. I think once you're cycling really well, in a really good regenerative system, you're probably not going to need the plant food. But most of us are not in that situation, that we're needing the plant food to help us get healthier plants, to build up an immune system, withstand pests. That's the point. I'm over here at my garden now, so and the sun's starting to get above this, so sorry about the light or whatever's going weird with that. But I'm going to catch this film yet today, so I'm going to show you the interplantings and some differences with these plants. These broccoli and the cauliflower over on the other side there are all the same age as the ones in the greenhouse. So same age and same management, but different environments. So you can see this cauliflower is some of the same cauliflower that we just seen at the greenhouse. How much bigger those ones are in the greenhouse. That's just how much more photosynthesis, that same genetics of plant, same management of the plant, everything the same is. So the game is getting that plant to do more photosynthesis. As far as the interplanting, I got a lot of crazy stuff going on here, right? So you'd like to plant plants that have a lot of scent. So we have chives, but obviously all the allium family will have a lot of scent. And then we have gem marigolds. There's several of them intertucked in between all of these guys, these broccoli and cauliflower. Now, this radish is a radish that came up from seed. I let a radish go to seed in the garden last year. And you can see down on its lower leaves that it's already had flea beetle damage. Now, some of that came more than a month ago when some of the flea beetles came out of emerged and started chowing down on that radish. Now that radish is going to make a trap crop compared to these broccoli and cauliflower. This is another bed over here that we have a lot of Clengia colorandi going to bloom, right? So it's putting off a lot of scent. There's more the gems in there. There's some French marigolds over on the other side. And we'll swing into this high tunnel here. I don't have as many of the cauliflower and broccoli and kale in here. There's other places, but these are interplanted with marigolds. And then the garlic over there. The garlic is a good interplanting. I've got it interplanted with peppers, but there's also an eggplant back in there with some marigolds with that eggplant to help protect it. And like I say, with the health of the plant, having more than 5 or 6 leaves is going to really help those plants. There's another cauliflower collard. I think it's a collard. Anyhow, the interplanting is interesting. We'll see if it helps or not, but the game really is the health of the plant. Okay, well, wrapping up today. Thanks for coming along, and hopefully you learned something about flea beetles, and hopefully figured out some way that you maybe can help yourself not have as big an issue with them. I'm very saddened by people not growing cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, radishes, those plants, because of the flea beetle. They're just an indicator. So let's get after the right direction. Let's get those plants healthier and get game on. Lots more food that are more nutritious for us. Thanks for visiting. Thanks for watching. And you subscribers, you're awesome. See ya.